So welcome. If you are seeing this as a recording on YouTube, welcome. Please follow me on YouTube. We're going to be talking about the Akashic records and why they can change people's lives, and quite often do, and why it actually confirms in some people who come to me for their Akashic readings, it confirms what they always knew. So the process of reading the Akashic records is putting yourself in the zone, in a frequency of trust, of humility. It's preparing the room, it's preparing your space, yourself, and there's a process. And then the portal's open, but you have to come, with humbly. You just can't kick down the doors, okay? And the Akashic record keepers, the masters, are there to assist. And what people have to understand is that the Akashic records are downloaded to you, okay, for this particular timeline. In other words, if a person was to get an Akashic reading at the age of, say, 18 to 20, okay, there are certain things at the age of that age spectrum that the client needs to understand. If a person has an Akashic reading at the age of 40, and it's in May of 2025, for example, just as an example, that is because in this particular timeline, in their consciousness, it is time for this person to receive the following messages about past lives, because now they're ready to receive some heavy stuff. Does that make sense? And that is going to be very important in realizing that one Akashic reading doesn't define your entire life. It's possible that you decide that's all you need, and that's fine, but it doesn't define your entire life, okay? So quite often, what's interesting is I get to work with various people from all over the world, and it's really exciting because these people are attracted to my vibration, and I've been given the task to be the messenger to deliver the message for that particular individual. Sometimes the first thing that comes down is totem animals. Sometimes it's spirit animals and things of that nature. But recently, I did 2 women. They're incredibly powerful. In fact, it was so intense. These 2 women who actually are friends, very good friends, and I did them separately, within a week of each other, that I'm not kidding. I did an Akashic reading for myself. I, resaged and sat and asked for downloads. And because I'm ready, I was dealing with shadows that I needed to handle. And I was up until like 6 o'clock in the morning. I kid you not, as the sun rose. And then finally, after meditation throughout the night and asking questions to my guide and taking notes and going back and forth. I mean, I could not sleep in this particular session. Was really intense. And because they were stacked back to back, actually, it wasn't a week apart. It was like 3 or 4 days apart. That's what it was. But anyway, they were stacked back to back. It was really, really intense. But it was intense because it was back to back. It was intense because their energy was intense. And these 2 women are here to really shift the vibrations of this planet. And I'm sure there's tons of people right now doing it as we speak. Don't get me wrong. But these women in past lives were very powerful. One of them was Syrian Andromedan. Another was from a race that I actually don't know. And it wasn't Pat. It wasn't Pleiadian at all. It was something else. It was a different type of humanoid species. And but I'll give you something that was very important. I kind of mentioned in one of my lives before, but it's really important that we talk about free will. And so I'm going to tell you what was one of the sessions as a case study. And so she's a healer in this life. In this incarnation, she's an actual healer. And she actually has had a looping karma. And this is what many of you who are not healers don't understand. Healers, psychics, Reiki masters, whatever, right? Okay, whatever healers. What happens is people care. I mean, they have massive empathy. And what she had gone through multiple incarnations in various modalities of healing, right, is that she couldn't save everyone. And you know this, that's common sense. If you have 100 clients that come to you, you might be lucky enough to be able to heal or help 80%. That's a very good number. That's an excellent number. But there's the 20% that can haunt a healer. 20%. And what was happening is that part of the message that came out of the gate, they weren't fucking around. They were like, she's a guardian on the planet, a keeper of souls who are lost till they meet her. She embodies wisdom in a bottle, compact and potent. She mirrors what they need to see. She will not judge, and she will never judge, must not judge. Each shadow is attracted to her wisdom. So people would come to her, and this is like, in particular, was it her issue. And you can't save them all. She can save some, but not all of them. And what had her loop, one of the things that was making her fall into 3D was the fact that she could not let go of those she could not save, could not heal, could not push to their own healing. And she needed to let them go, because even free will is used to self-sabotage, to self-destruct. Free will is a bitch, man. Free will and the monkey mind combination is no joke. It's seriously actually dangerous. Free will and the monkey mind on a bender to self-sabotage. I'm not joking. And they can't stop it. They, meaning the light beings, they can't stop it. They can't do shit about it. And so for her to reclaim her full autonomy, she had to, and this is a direct quote from my guys, release the pigeons from the cage and let them find their way home. Seriously. Because you can't in other words, you can't repeat and keep fucking ruminating over these people. And some of these people from past incarnations were coming to her once again for her healing powers. And once again, they were looping out of being able to be helped by her. And I would say that in some case it was done purposely for her to release. Holding on to bonds, perceived duties that are dead, decaying, or toxic. So literally, her journey in this incarnation is to continue being a healer. Don't get me wrong, healing facilitator, healer, whatever, right? And she's an amazing hands-on healer. But she had to let go of a sense of failure and duty to people who honestly, swear to God, didn't want to fucking heal, ultimately. They wanted to give everything to her, to carry. It's like, listen, I'm having a hard time carrying my backpack full of toxic shit. Will you carry it for me? And I'm going to tell you something. A lot of people do that. There is a very well-known content creator, influencer in the Twin Flame coaching journey. And I blocked her after that. I was like, oh, fuck that. And she basically said that someone else, and I'm judging, someone else, so she went to a healer who told her that they would open her third eye. Are you fucking kidding me? So I'm not even sure how crazy it got. Did they tell her they did it remotely? How insane is that? Okay. Now, why am I saying that? Because you will have healers like they're giving me the Tibetan Nepalese monks, that go up in the snow and meditate in a loincloth for fucking hours. Okay, clearly there was a mentorship that happened when they were children, when they joined the monastery, right? Up in Dharmansala or in some of the Nepalese or Tibetan monasteries, right? So there's somebody that's going to come in that's going to teach you, right? How to do this and that. That's going to coach you, mentor you, train you, like Shaolin masters, right? That's going to happen, okay? But at the end of the day, guess what? It's on you. So someone can show you how to open your third eye, but ultimately you're opening that door. No one else can do it. So she was dealing with this kind of heaviness that was really, really dense. And in another one, and this is something that for many of us harks back, unfortunately, to a memory. It's a haunting memory for many of us who are psychics, who are healing facilitators or healers. And that is the oracles of Delphi in Greece. I've mentioned it many, many times before. But this came up in her Akashic because there was a point in a time when, as you well know, there's the memory that is still whispered in the wind of us as when we incarnated as women as being honored, respected, protected, and not treated like chattels or breeding cows. We were treated with massive, almost actually awe in some cases, and rightly so, well earned. And so the oracles of Delphi for, I'd say, a few hundred years were actually for real, downloading some incredible truths about society, about prophesizing the ends of battles, crops, the right leaders to be put into place, things of that nature was definitely happening. But as males and as the veils of 3D began to lower itself and patriarchy decided to goose step into a new world, a world that would be filled with blood and iron, right? They would force these Vestal virgins, these oracles, meaning psychics, to speak what they wanted them to speak. Okay? And if you did not do it exactly as they said, they take your life. So the throat chakra for many women, from us descending, I have a knee jerk when I hear people talking about Wicca and witches, and it's not because I'm against it. Listen up, stay with me on this one, because it's not a popular idea. We went from being high priestesses and priests to warlocks and witches hunting and running for our lives in some situations. They treated us like we were rabid animals. And so from the time we fell, and the oracles of Delphi for me is a very good, starting point, because I know it happened all over the world for different reasons and so forth. But let's start there. Is the beginning of our throat chakras shutting down. And honestly, in some levels, quite literally. I'll give you an example. In one Akashic reading that I did, the high priestess had long black hair down, almost down to her knees. And she was scrying meaning looking into, it was like a container of water with polished obsidian, okay, and then water, and she was scrying. And she was leaning hands on either side of the vessel to look in. And she was seeing something that was counter to this warrior king, whatever you want to call it, commander, who wanted her to see something else. And she could not lie. Because you can't lie, because the karma's fucked. So the next scene I saw is his blade going from one side of her throat to the other. And then there was another incarnation where, again, that was a similar ending. And so she developed throat chakra issues. No shit. Hello. And God knows what else I didn't pick up. Maybe other incarnations that honestly did not show themselves, because those were pretty two brutal back-to-back situations. And I remember her saying, I have problems with that. Another situation was when same client was I was shown where she was pew-pewed in the stomach, in the hip, and then the thigh. And she said, I always have problems with my stomach, my hip, and my legs, and it's always on the left side. Okay? So why is Akashic readings important? Well, because this is something I tell my clients to do before they perhaps do a hypnotherapy session with me. Why? Because they're less likely to gaslight themselves. In a hypnotherapy session, I've had to pry out information. I could tell with a client that they were pausing and trying to rewrite the whole, like edit the entire story that they wanted to deliver to me, because what they were seeing in their monkey mind, their 3D brain, even though they were in an altered state of consciousness, the monkey mind was stepping in to shield the truth. And so I had to pull out information. I'll give you an example in a hypnotherapy session where I asked the person, how many fingers do you have? And when she answered 5, I knew she was lying. I knew immediately she was lying. And after we had the session, I asked her, tell me again how many fingers. And she paused. She was still trying to make sense of it. And she said 3. And she said, how did you know? How did you know? I was like, because I said the way you said it, the way you paused, the way you kind of like you weren't sure how to deliver it. And so finally you gave an answer that would be acceptable, 5 fingers. So what I find, and I'm not just saying that to say it, but unless somebody has had experience as with hypnotherapy sessions, right? Quantum healing, LBL, whatever, right? Life between lives. I think it's best sometimes to just do the Akashic, because at that point, I'm delivering through the Akashic masters, right? The keepers. I'm delivering stuff that is going to be more likely accepted, because they always throw something, 1 or 2 things that the person will say, oh yeah, I do have that problem, or oh yeah, I have that. Last time I did a live on the Akashic, I told you about a woman who was an African warrior, and how a British, it looked like a British hunter decided it was a good idea to just pew him in the chest, right in the heart chakra. And she said, my mother-in-law actually painted an African warrior where he's actually getting, like, his heart chakra looks like it's exploding. And so I always get some kind, almost always, it's not always, but almost always, something that the client can chew on, hang on to, and go, okay, so that confirms that. Because it's usually a very benign life, a very uninteresting life, honestly. But because all the other stuff is so fucking major, that I think my guides, the system that of light beings that use me as a conduit, realize you better give them something, And this isn't always the case. I'm just saying in this case it does. I'll give you an example of something. I was doing an Akashic reading for a woman who's a badass. I mean, she's really a tough cookie. And I remember her totem animal, the first animal that came through was a unicorn. I'm like, a unicorn? What the fuck? And not this woman. A puma, an eagle, a hawk, whatever, right? A wolf. No, a unicorn. But, I do what I'm told. And I delivered that, and there were other animals that came through before I kicked into the actual past lives. But so I said, look, I'm almost embarrassed to say, but one of the animals they're telling you is your totem animal is a unicorn. And she fucking busted up laughing and saying, the house I bought, the reason I bought the house, and I knew it was a sign from God or my guides, was I went into one of the bedrooms, and on the side of the window, was a sticker of a unicorn. And that's when I knew that was my house. So for her, it was significant. It was a significant symbol. And why are the Akashic records important to explore? Because, and again, people think I'm a little rough when I say it, but if you're playing small, because that's really fucking it. If you're playing small, or you're confused, or you don't know what your mission is, or you don't know X, Y, and Z, and you're still like, I don't know, looping in patterns of fucking stagnation or self-destructive behavior, or I can't do this, or I'm not ready bullshit, kind of just refusing to step into your power. The Akashic records and the downloads of certain incarnations, especially if you come out as a starseed, which I've been very, very blessed that damn near, I'd say 95% of my clients come in full on fucking starseeds, like past lives on other planets, being involved in all kinds of stuff, from Andromedan to Pleiadian to Sirian, Arcturian, and I'm going to be blunt, and incarnations that of humanoids that I have never seen mentioned ever, never. Okay. And so that's really interesting to me. And so some of the planets like Venus and Jupiter and Saturn, people look at it like, oh, there's no way. Mars, there's no life there. Yeah, there's no life in 3D, okay? But there's life in 7D. There's life in 6D. And if you know anything about science, you know that we are unable to see most of the colors that surround us. And that is a science fact. The frequency of some of these colors, our eyes can't capture. And so if we understand that on a scientific level, if we understand how vibration and the lower frequency and density of 3D is so fucking intensely dense. I keep using the analogy of being underwater and holding your breath for as long as you can. And you know how painful that can be after you've hit your first 2-minute mark and you're trying to hit 3. I don't know if you've ever played that game in a swimming pool in the ocean where you're competing with somebody in terms of holding your breath, but I used to do that as a teenager all the time. And my point is, it's pretty intense. It's pretty intense. And so, let me see, what else can I tell you? One of the things that came up in one of my Akashic readings was the fact that the free will concept. And this person was an Andromedan. It's actually the same woman, by the way. And she had discovered the various types of hormonal issues that embody various sentient beings and how planets direct the flow of consciousness. And that basically she was having a meeting with, galactic members and explaining to them that our consciousness and our diversity and our free will had to be maintained at any cost. And the council was concerned with war, bullshit. Because, that's been happening. If you read the Sumerian tablets, Zachariah Stitchin's work, some people say it's a crackpot. Well, here's the thing. Not everyone's crazy. A lot of us are seeing the same shit. Okay? So we're not completely losing it. We're actually remembering ourselves. But anyway, so in that meeting, in this presentation, if you will, as an Andromedan, she was saying that to lobotomize this diversity, because their concern was we need peace. And this free will issue is making people do shit, sentient beings do shit that's not good forget the planets, but life forms across the universes. This is not working for us. And so she was arguing that we had to honor free will at any cost because this was given to us by the Creator and that could not be fucked with. And also that we had to trust, they had to trust that eventually we would come to understand how to master our free will for the greater good of ourselves and the collective consciousness, not just on a particular planet we were living on, but across the realms. And I thought that was pretty fucking intense. Because again, I keep bringing up Bhagavad Gita, the Battle of Kurukshetra, where, Krishna and Arjuna are across the battlefield. I've mentioned it many times. This is why it's one of the greatest stories ever told. It is, depending on who you speak to, it's a 7,000-year-old story. It predates the Torah. It predates the Bible. It predates all that bullshit. And it talks about free will and fate. So this Andromedan was saying, yeah, I understand that your concerns are that, things are going kind of pear-shaped and people are going off. We got the Draconians, we're having some galactic wars, shit's happening. I get it. But you have to understand that we cannot lobotomize free will and think that peace will prevail, because it is a false peace. At that point, we've shackled sentient souls into conforming, not out of their free will, but forced into it through lobotomy, right? So that is an important question to really talk about. And it's interesting to me because we keep, and I don't mean to be disrespectful, but I guess I'm going to sound disrespectful. We keep reading these books, right? These religious books that have kept people wrapped in the perpetuate of the hamster wheel of being no smarter, no more knowledge than they were 2,000 years ago when it began, right? This orthodox teachings, or 3,000 years ago, let's put it that way. Let's throw in the Torah while we're at it. And we've never really been allowed, and those who tried to, ask the right questions on these holy books, right? To articulate the deeper philosophies of our journeys and why we were looping and repeating, wash and repeat, different clothing, different age, and now we've got technology and wash and repeat. Why? Well, it's because we weren't allowed for like 3,000 years to even question on a deeper philosophical system of what was the purpose of our free will. To explore what? To explore the diversity of thought form. Why? To understand the complexity of pure evil and pure good. Why? To make decisions out of our free will, what we really truly wanted to experience. Why? So that we would decide whether or not we wanted to be in the darkest pit of our own consciousness. And some people do enjoy it. I mean, I'm sorry, some people love being evil. And I'm sure you've met one or two in your incarnation. At least in this one, at least one. If not, you've seen them on TV play out as leaders. But why is it important? Because when you say, I do not consent, you come from a place not of naivete, but a place of power. And that bears weight on the realms of these galactic leaders, councils, record keepers. It bears weight because now it looks like you've learned something from your own investigation, from your own questioning. And that has a potency of graduating you and hopefully catapulting a lot of other people around you where you influence them with your philosophy, your clarity. I mean, we're still reading Plato and Herodotus and Socrates. We're still studying them in universities all over the world. So clearly thinking, questioning, and discussing and trying to figure it out with a group of people is important for our ascension. But then these dogmatic religions came into play and basically corrupted us. By the way, if it wasn't for the Irish and the Arabs, we wouldn't even have records of the ancient Greek philosophers, on the side note, because they were busy burning all kinds of shit. So, ultimately, when you do an Akashic reading, what you're doing is you're saying to the universe, I'm ready to find out what are my shadows, what are my fears, what compelled me to shut my throat chakra or my heart or all my chakras. What was that moment where I fell into absolute, amnesia? And what do I need to do with this information that I've just been given? And so quite often I tell clients, listen, if you don't mind, after the Akashic reading with me, I'll send you the recording, blah, blah, blah. But do me a favor, don't do anything. Like don't go to the party, don't go out to dinner. Let that sink in. Journal. Because when I'm giving you these memories, if they resonate, which they should, at least half of them should totally resonate, it will activate you to start having your own downloads or complementary incarnations that help you understand what is being shared and why these particular lives are being shared for you, to dig yourself out of 3D looping of incarnations. So you don't have to keep doing this shit. So you can play big. So that you can start co-creating something that actually grows your passion, makes you feel like you're actually living your life at its fullest level. So I wanted to share that because I think it's so important for people to understand. And most people go all in. And it's important, honestly, that people come to their healing with a ferocity that really kicks fucking fear out the way. Get the fuck out of my way. I want to know what the hell I'm about. And when we die, just so you know, we don't just get one life review. I don't know where it's, and don't get me wrong. I mean, I realize that we've been taught a lot of things that are, very necessary and this and that, but we get multiple life reviews. There's the ultimate life review, the beginning, and then it's broken down into parts, like chapter 1 when you were born, and chapter 33 when you were 33. I'm just giving you examples of that, and moments that where you paused, where you went left instead of right, not to judge you, so you can figure out, what was that move I made? What was it based on? Fear? Was it based on fear of failure, fear of being judged, fear of making others uncomfortable? What was it? Or was it lack of self-worth? What was it? And so it's interesting because from my downloads and working with my spirit guides and all of that, what I'm also realizing, and what I'm being shown actually, is that we do get through, and I'm going to use the word decontamination chambers. And these are places where they help you clear some energy. Think of it like cleaning the barnacles off a ship. You take the ship out of the ocean and you realize, wow, we need to patch that up. Oh, look at that. Boy, that's a lot of barnacles. That's going to tip the boat over, whatever. Things of that nature, right? So there's a decontamination process to help the person realize that they can shed the false personality, right? The ego of being Joe, the muscle man. Joe, the muscle man, who was straight, married with 3 kids, but really he was gay and in the closet. Joe that had to live with having a 9-to-5 job and feeling like his whole life meant nothing. That Joe, that kind of Joe. And then there was, you know what I mean? And that persona grew, the tough guy, the guy who everyone looked up to, and he didn't want to disappoint anyone. So he played the story that everyone wanted him to play. And Joe took all of that to his grave. What do you think happens to a Joe that had that kind of incarnation? What do you think happens? What do you think? He just gets a life review and let's go on to the next incarnation? No, it's not that fucking simple, because there's pain there. There's unresolved pain. There's a sense of betrayal to the self, to the wife, to maybe the kids, keeping secrets, maybe having, a couple picadillos in the closet. In other words, lovers. And a Joe who has a persona to be, Harley Davidson dude. He's got these motorcycles. It's a whole life that is actually a character that he played, no different than me handing him a script and saying, you're going to be Joe. And you're going to play that role as Joe. And for a person to go on to the next, a sentient being, a soul, to go on to the next level of understanding of themselves, they have to understand they need to be helped a little bit. It's kind of like having a massage, going to a Reiki master to do some, recalibration of your energies. You know what I'm saying? you're going to get that too on the other side. And then they're going to let you figure shit out, because that's the whole point of free will, figuring yourself out. They'll ask you the question, but you have to have the answer. And of course, there's no wrong answer. But then they'll ask you other questions that'll lead you to a more expansive understanding of what created the situation of Joe. And Joe can't be Joe in the next incarnation, by the way. Especially if he's not going to come back in 3D. Especially if he's going to continue on to another higher frequency. He can't be Joe. That personality isn't a fit. So now Joe has to... Imagine Joe's had like 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years of incarnating as what people wanted him to be. Because let's say in the 15th century, he was Daphne. And Daphne was 15. And Daphne was being forced to marry a man who was 3 times her age, or go to the convent. And she had to only take and allow only this one man to be her master, because she was a chattel. And at the age of 32, she dies of birth, that it goes wrong, very wrong, but she's left 3 kids behind. And so Daphne, literally 500 years later, becomes Joe. And so these kinds of some scars, aka impressions, are heavy. They're dense. They're like letting shit pile up, incarnation after incarnation. And the way we were incarnating up until recently was boom, fast, boom, I want another body, boom, I want to do it again, boom. And so we never really got to some resolutions. So the soul got covered over again and again and again, similar to barnacles building up on a ship or on a whale. And what happens is that now that we're going through the ascension, and Joe can do a lot of his healing on the other side. He can actually ascend on the other side. Maybe death was his healing. He dies at 58 of a heart attack because his heart is broken. Because he was never honest for himself, much less other people. So it breaks him. And he flies to the other side. And there's a team of light beings, his guide, and so on and so forth, that are there to help him resolve these loops that he's never been able to really, handle, clear, purge, transmute. And so Joe now is in good hands. And Joe is going through some contamination chambers because he's learning so fast at such a great pace. And he's really learning how to forgive himself and how to love himself in ways he could never do in these incarnations. And so, believe it or not, he ascends on the other side. And at that point, Joe, that personality that's been so entrenched, like sticky shit on his body, that was not his true self, slips off him. And he's able to stand in his absolute truth, light, and self-forgiveness. So our incarnations, though mundane looking, right, Joe or Daphne or whatever, mundane, right? Mundane lives in a way. But they're very complex emotionally. And they create heavy karma. Dense karma that entangles us. And then we become very hard on ourselves. We are the judges. That judges the most harsh on the other side. But we keep forgetting that many of these incarnations, well, most of them, pretty much damn near all of them, were done from a density that is still so intense that to actually hack out of this density is a miracle. You knowing about your incarnation, you realizing that you have a telepathic communication with a beloved, you realizing and seeing the synchronicities and the way the universe speaks to you, that's fucking a miracle. Because you're doing all of that through a 3D dense metal cage little brain. And somehow you're managing to still rise. And that's extraordinary. And I can tell you, from what I'm seeing on the other side, is that your guides, the light team, are in awe because they're not so sure they could do that. In fact, there are a lot of your guides, for example, the light team and so forth, that have never, they wouldn't even fucking attempt to incarnate into 3D because they know that they would be lost. Absolutely lost. They would lose their consciousness. And that's something that is a real thing. I bring it up all the time if you want to look up Dr. Joe Dispenza working with giants. And with Lilu Ma, I bring it up again because he actually talks about the giants saying, yeah, please raise the frequency because we can't lower ourselves or else we'll lose our consciousness. Red Mama Yeti says, why do past life wounds show up as sore spots, issues in this incarnation? Because they're unresolved. Because you're not seeing. In other words, when they're unresolved, they will show up again and again until you finally get it. It's like, look, it's kind of like going to a classroom as a kid and learning your multiplication table. Repetition, 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 and eventually you understand. You memorize. In this case, you memorize. Repetition in teaching someone how to read. Repetition in teaching someone how to understand poetry, metaphoric poetry, or haiku, for example. It's repetition. It's no different than wounds from incarnations. So it will be brought up again and again and again until you get it. And it makes sense to me. And then eventually one day you have an aha moment and that's it. Samskara that sticks to you, that attracts a frequency match to repeat that story that you've never been able to release as a wound is boom, released. Damn near almost immediately. People that have issues with their somatic body, right? Somatic release and somatic exercises that Reginald Ray first coined. I never saw anyone talk about somatic healing until he came along. So giving the man credit, his name is Reginald Ray. And he's tons of classes on somatic healing and releasing, which are connected to the pain body, which is connected to the soul, which the soul will repeat. I had a friend who did a hypnotherapy session. This was back when I was like 32. I'd sent her to my hypnotherapist before I became one, right? And she said that in 3 incarnations, she had issues with her lungs. In 3 incarnations. By the way, that's still repeated today. She was always a singer or a ballerina. And she was always dealing with lung issues. And lung, according to Louise Hay, who first mapped the pain body breakdown on, as you know, lung is connected to grief. And ironically, she was dealing with betrayals of, in fact, even her husband showed up in her past life and he had betrayed her and left her penniless. So she died of consumption. Things of that nature repeat themselves again and again. I had a friend of mine who I sent to this hypnotherapist as well. And she had met a man. She was biracial. This man was tall, great looking. She was beautiful. He was like 6'4", and they both loved the Renaissance Fair. I forgot how they met, but anyway, he was a white dude. He was like 6'4", Viking looking, the whole bit. And for 1 year, they had an amazing, it was like the perfect love affair, right? And suddenly, she wanted more, She didn't want just weekends in Santa Barbara and so on. She wanted more. And she wanted to get pregnant, and she wanted to have his baby, which is normal. That's just how it is. Women fall in love with their man. They want a baby. It's just how women are wired. So long story short, she went ahead and told me what was going on. And I told her, I have a feeling there's something going on with New Orleans. I think you were, I'm getting past life shit in New Orleans. I don't know what it is, but you go see my person. And she went, sure enough, she had a past life in New Orleans. She was his quadroon mistress. He had a whole white family in the New Orleans area. And he had his separate wife family with his kids and this and that. And with her, he didn't want any children at all. At all. So she constantly had to end pregnancies through various means, as you can imagine, herbs and other ways. And it blew her mind. She was sobbing when she came out of the hypnotherapy saying, oh my God, now I know what the fuck's going on. And so she didn't confront him, but she wanted to talk to him about what is it? Why can't we do this? And it was so volatile that it destroyed their relationship. It ended their relationship. But what was important in that lesson wasn't that it ended her relationship. It's that she learned the process. She learned that she was repeating a pattern with him that was karmic. And she broke the pattern by leaving him. She left him. He didn't leave her. She left him. All she had to do was say, okay, no baby. And that would have been fine. But she was like, baby or I'm out. Baby or I'm out. It was an ultimatum because she did not want to continue that pattern. And so she chose herself. She chose, I'm doing this on my own. And if he's meant to be, he'll come back to me. If he's not meant to be, then we're not supposed to be together. And she was correct. They were never again together. It was not a twin flame, clearly. It was what you would call a karmic soulmate. There was a karmic pattern. They were soulmates. And though it was painful for her, she recovered and continued on her life. But she broke the spiral of that karmic loop. And thank God she understood the value of that session when she did the hypnotherapy. It takes courage to heal. You're not going to always have a happy ending. That's what makes me laugh about people with the show in 1923 and they're pissed off because they want a happy ending. That's not how... The happy ending, the most important happy ending, to be honest, is on the other side of the veils. That's the most important, in my opinion. That doesn't mean I'm correct, but that's my opinion, is that the happy ending is on that side. This side is where we do a lot of clearing, learning, empowering, seeing patterns, repeating. Sometimes the patterns start with our parents, caretakers, and we see it repeated with certain lovers that we keep choosing. And so that's what people need to understand. Yeah, healing is not for everyone. Why do you think so many people are addicted to bullshit? They don't want to heal. They want to be completely lobotomized. They want to lobotomize themselves through alcohol, through drugs, through sex, through shopping, through whatever, gambling. They don't want to know. They want to completely eradicate memory. And that's tragic. So if you're one of the lucky ones who actually wants to know yourself, know thyself be true, if you actually want to do that kind of work, congratulations. Because you truly are one of the special ones. It's a special thing to be hell-bent on healing and saying, I don't give a fuck what I find out. I want out of this fucking hamster wheel. Whatever it takes, I want out. I'll do whatever it takes. I'll see whatever it takes. I'll go to the ends of the world to find out what has kept me looping for 3,000 years of bullshit. I want to know. That takes courage. And that's why when you get frustrated with your lover, I'm not going to call him a twin because I don't want to go there today, a lover, and you're frustrated because they don't want to be on the path you're on, you have to respect the level of fears people cling to. And for them, their fear is a buoy. The ability to walk into the unknown, the darkness, the hall of mirrors, to walk through the hall of mirrors and not to be terrified that you're gonna get lost is badass. And most people, grown-ass men, will not go into massive healing. They will not go into therapy. They will not go into hypnotherapy. They will not go into Akashic readings. They won't do any plant medicine. Or if they do the plant medicine, they get addicted to it and they keep visiting it every month, and it becomes not an excavation of truth. It becomes just another method of getting high, to be honest. Okay, they're full of shit. But a lot of men that are right now choosing the path of celibacy for whatever reason. I keep talking about it a lot because I'm like, I'm in shock as well. But there are a lot of men right now going deep and down and getting real serious and stopping everything and doing a 360 of their outside environment to determine what is going to stay, what cannot stay, if they're going to continue on their journey to let go, for example. Those are rare men, okay? And as for women, yes, those are rare women as well. We have a lot more women doing it. When I look at how many people follow my videos, 80% of women and 20% of men. And I think that's a correct number that's out there. You see? So I don't want to go too personal, but I know of people who I really, really loved. I mean, I really cared about them very much. And they did not want to face the truth of their actions. They preferred acting as if it never happened. They preferred like saying, well, that happened when I was 24 years old. That's not who I am. I don't even want to talk about it. But the thing is, what you did at 24 years old is still haunting you. You may not see it, but your actions show that you're haunted by it. And because you're haunted by it, it owns you. You don't own yourself. And that's what people need to understand. But honestly, look at the world. Look at how people cling to their holy books and how that's all they want to. It's like trying to tear a Linus blanket out of a fucking 2-year-old having a tantrum. Good luck. They don't want to know other ways of philosophizing or discovering or excavating their soul's journeys. They want to think that they've only had one incarnation. You got to realize where people's minds are at. You got to understand your audience. And those people are not my audience. When I talk about Yeshua, I talk about it from a whole different fucking framework. And the funny part is, you would think that, for example, giving an example of Christians, you'd think they'd read every book ever written about the possibilities that maybe he actually survived or transmuted or was talking about reincarnation or whatever the hell, or that Mary Magdalena was his equal. You would think people would want to know every single, if you really you claim you love this human being that walked this planet, you would think you want to buy every book. Kind of like if you're a fan of fucking Mick Jagger or Marilyn Monroe, you're going to buy every fucking book that's ever been written. But they don't want to know, you see. So when you realize that about people, your average Joe and Jill, then you realize that it's a small number of us. It's always been a small number of us, by the way, through the thousands of years. It's always been a small number of us. But at least I can say that in this part of the world, we're safe. And I can assure you that if I was talking to you in another part of certain parts of the world, I would not be safe. Neither would you if you were listening to me. You wouldn't be safe either, by the way. So it's not like a lot has changed. Maybe it's just that maybe in the ancient world we had communities, no one knew where we fucking lived. I mean, when you look in Nepal and you look at the Himalayas, you look at some of these mountains and you see that they carved whole fucking monasteries on the side of mountains. You can see how people had to really run away from quote unquote civilization to fucking be safe to excavate true spiritual work. So they could be left the fuck alone and play with frequency sounds and levitations and telepathy and whatever the hell else they were coming up with. You know what I mean? So look at how many people are listening right now. Look at the number. So not to pat yourself on the back, but fuck it. Yeah, you should, honestly, because you're a rare one. There aren't that many people that want to know what you want to know. You're thirsty for knowledge and you want to be freed from the shackles of 3D. You're smart enough to know, this system here, that doesn't work. There's a part of you that remembers your past lives on a physical level. You remember what it was like to feel free. You remember what it was like to just get up in the morning and do whatever and not be bound and chained by fear and duties and things that you did. Most of the things most people do today, they don't want to fucking do. at all. So, one of the reasons why the Celestine prophecy, I forgot the author's name, but anyway, was so popular, it was a parable. I remember reading it halfway going, oh, fuck, it's a parable? You mean this shit didn't really happen? I was so pissed, but I finished. I read it twice. And Cindy Crawford was reading the Celestine prophecy. This was in the 80s. Everybody, I swear to God, everybody was reading the Celestine prophecy. James Redfield. I just remembered his name. James Redfield. And it was made into a movie. It's a shitty little movie, but what can you do? Read the book. It's better. And it's all about these seals, these philosophical ideas about how to approach life. And ultimately finding out that a society up in the mountains of the Andes, I guess, I'm trying to remember, because seriously, it was in the 80s when I last read it. A whole society of people walk into another dimension, literally leave everything behind. And there are theories that actually happened in the Harappan Valley, aka Indus Valley. And that this particular society had running water, hot and cold, like the Romans. And they had all the trappings you can imagine. And a society that lasted 1,000 years, undisturbed by pestilence, war, whatever. And they actually just up and disappeared. Gone. All the trappings of a meal half eaten, kind of like Pompeii, except there were no bodies like Pompeii. It's like the bread was still in the oven. Dishes were still on the table, as if they were living a life, and suddenly they crossed into another dimension. It's mind-blowing. So we have ideas from those stories that it's possible. It is possible. And the only story that we have of a complete collapse, honestly, the deluge that they talk about, Noah's Ark, but, we know it's Atlantis, is a tragedy. But we're not getting the fact that some people back in Atlantis realized that things were going to be going south too. They were like already picking up on the energy 200 years before it went downhill. And they were already programming themselves to be a frequency match to other planets. They were not going to incarnate here anymore. They could see it going down. And I've talked in my other lives about how I did in my Akashic reading. I saw pockets of 5D that was still being enjoyed by various people around this planet. So even though Atlantis fell and there was a massive collapse and the delusion, this and that and the other, there were people like in Tibet, people like parts of Africa, people like parts in Asia, parts of Europe that were still in 5D frequency. And the collapse didn't really take hold until the Abrahamic religions took hold. The patriarchy took over, and there was no balance of the genders. In other words, the yin and yang were now out of kilter, and it's been out of kilter ever. It's a great symbol to look at, but it's fucking sideways. It's out of balance because the sacred feminine is not being protected and honored in the way she should be. And this is coming from me, who's had incarnations, I've said it multiple times, as a warrior, and not a good one, meaning not a kind one to the feminine sex. Not at all. So a lot of us have come back as women to right the wrongs, to be the strong voices, to recalibrate, realizing that this needs to happen. Also on a spiritual level, some of us prefer the feminine sex over the masculine, and vice versa. So there's a lot more beauty than we allow ourselves to dream about. And I mean daydream about, not even dream, daydream about it. If you allow yourself to daydream, you may actually remember snatches of your own incarnation, which I think was pretty cool, actually. Okay, whatever. They're telling me to do something, which is so weird. Yes, that book changed my life in 2001 when I found it. Yes. Yeah, the Celestine Prophecy. It's a great book. Right now I'm reading The Camino by Shirley MacLaine. And I'm telling my book club people that after we do Journey of Souls and we do whatchamacallit, oh fuck, the Surrender Experiment. Those are two. No, we already did that one, sorry. Journey of Souls, and there was another book we were doing. I'm trying to remember. But anyway, after that, we're gonna do Out on a Limb by Shirley MacLaine, which is definitely about a twin flame story, her lover. And then we're gonna go right into the Camino. And the Camino is a walk that's well known by Catholics, and a lot of spiritualists also do it. I've mentioned that before, and it's kind of a test of will. It's a test of your strength, mental strength, and for many of us who are attracted to that walk, it's a soul retrieval. If you're attracted to it, you've got to be called to it. It's not something you do because, oh, what the fuck, I have nothing better. No, you have to be called. There's certain things you want to make sure that you're called to it. And if you're called to it, then it's a soul retrieval. You're literally gathering lost parts of yourself on that particular path, and other path that'll lead you here, there, and the other. That was a good book. I don't know. It was a very good book. Yeah, I thought it was a very good book. Anyway, any questions or comments about Akashic readings? Because I know a lot of people are talking about it, and I just, I wanted to share my journey in terms of reading. And I've been talking about writing a book for a long time. The way I write is I talk about it to myself, actually, usually. And sometimes it takes years. Like I did a breast cancer book, right? It was like a picture book. It was like I called it the Kama Sutra for lovers, and they're for, breast cancer survivors and their lovers. So I worked on that book for damn near a year. And I waited. I could have put it together in like 3 months. But I waited until I sat next to someone who told me about breast cancer in men. And that's when I had the aha moment going, that's what I've been waiting for. I had totally not thought of, breast cancer for men. And so I sat across a researcher who told me about his friend Gordon, who was in his early 50s, in shape, ate well, running marathons with his wife, and they were looking forward to retiring, and they were looking forward to traveling, and then he was hit with breast cancer, and he had to have a mastectomy. And at that point, that's when I realized, oh my God, I have to add the story, add him as a drawing, which I did. And that's when I finished wrapping up the book. So sometimes for me, the process of writing something, I have to wait, and I know what I'm waiting. It's not, in this case, it's not procrastination. It's actually waiting for the right information to come to me, and then boom, I'm ready to start writing. So the book I'm writing, working on, gathering my papers, I'm getting like that whispering hot breath on the back of my neck by my guides that it's now time to really start organizing my notes and all of that, and my recordings and whatever I have, because this is going to help a lot of people, because it's going to show the different ways to see the those realms. And the fact that there's so many star seeds, I was laughing with a friend going, yeah, we are the disclosures, that we've been looking for. Yeah, we're not the little green men, it's us. We're those great, powerful star seeds that were incarnating on other planets before this planet was ever ready to take us as life forms. And that's incredible. And the fact that you want to remember yourself is massive. And hopefully you can, influence other people in wanting to be curious about this. I would hope. But sometimes, and I'm going to be vulnerable for a minute, sometimes I get really sad because I realize, that 144,000 number, that number, yeah, I think it's quite literal sometimes. I don't think there's a lot of us. Do we need a lot of us to tip the scales into 5D? No, not as long as all 144,000 of us want the same type of new earth, and everyone I talk to wants the same type of situation. I kid you not. I'll describe something and they'll finish my sentence with something I've dreamed of since I was 16. I'm not kidding. So a lot of us want the same things in this new earth. A lot of us understand what it's going to take. So yeah, all we need is 144,000 of us to be on the same page. And I don't think we've ever had that number of power before now. So it's almost like everything's just moving and flowing in the right wave. I'll give you an example of what I think is beautiful that's going on right now, which you might get annoyed, and I'm not here to annoy you, but it's very important. Do you see pictures or do you read something? I'm sorry, what kind of question is that? How does that type of reading work? Do you see pictures or do you read something? No, it's telepathic, it's written, it's telepathic, it's images, and then I write it down as I'm going, if that's what you're asking. Anyway, so hang on, let me remember. That threw me off the rails for a minute. Hang on, let me think here. Trying to remember because my mind is just boom boom. The 144,000, that number is rigid. Meaning, when a person dies, somebody else takes the baton. I've said that a million times, at least a million times. But it's important that we all kind of start talking about what we see about the new earth. And is it utopic? Absolutely. Is it, and do we not deserve it? Was it not before? Wasn't Lemuria a utopia? Wasn't it? Of course it was. So we don't have to fear that what we're desiring is impossible. What we have to understand is that our brain has been so well brainwashed for so long that he thinks anything. It doesn't even believe in ghosts. It doesn't believe in ghosts. It doesn't believe in telepathy. Technically, if you want to talk about the monkey brain and how it's been trained, none of what we're talking about here does it believe it. Because it's been well trained. And fear is the massive factor that keeps it shut. So the fact that you can hack out of your monkey brain here and there, and then what will happen is you'll have beautiful downloads, and then suddenly out of the blue, you'll second guess yourself, gaslight yourself, and you'll shut down because you think you're going crazy. The first thing people say to me usually it's regarding twin flames, is they'll say, I feel like I'm going crazy. First words out of their mouth. Feel like I'm going crazy. Why? Do you think you would have woken up and asked all these questions if it wasn't for the activation and then being abandoned, left, ghosted, whatever? Sometimes it is a twin flame. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's just a soulmate that is activating you and doing all the wrong things to create the right things in your conscious evolution. Yeah, 144,000 on the same page. Exactly. So that's exactly what we need to see. We need to determine. And that's why it might take a minute. There's a lot of souls being born right now who are on that page. A lot of souls. They don't want to work 9 to 5. And the boomers are talking massive shit about them like they're lazy. And I'd say, hell no. These are kids that actually understand the meaning of life. What are you, crazy? Why should I? Let me tell you something. When I was in my 20s, I lived in San Francisco with the father of my son. And I remember him working at City Hall in San Francisco. Beautiful building. San Francisco in the 80s was like fucking magical. But anyway, there was a lot of other things that were very, very negative. The AIDS pandemic was a real social experiment. I'll just say that. And I lost a lot of friends during that time. Young men that should have never gone through what they went through. Okay? But anyway. And I remember him telling me about a man who worked at City Hall, had worked at City Hall since he was like 17. He was going to retire. He had worked at City Hall for 40 fucking years. And 2 months before his retirement, he was fired. And my husband at the time knew him, and knew there was no reason for that firing. It was just that they didn't want him to get his retirement. So very early on in the 80s, I learned as a young woman that you should never be loyal to any company, not a city, not a state-run job, not a corporate America job, none of them. So very early on, I was bouncing. I was bouncing for more money, more money, more money. And what I'm loving is that I'm seeing, Gen Xers literally bouncing. They 17, I can get 19, I'm out, bye. They're fucking gone. And why shouldn't they do that? Why should they be loyal to a company that wouldn't give one fuck if they got hurt in a car accident or passed away, right? They wouldn't give a fuck. They'd be replaced. So I think this kind of understanding, this rebelliousness, this irreverence is very important. It's the first steps to unplugging from the matrix. The first thing you got to do to unplug from the matrix is disrespect it. Doesn't that make sense? Why should you respect your jailer? It makes no sense to me. But you got boomers going, oh no, no. And I'm like, no, you're wrong. The hippie generation were on the right track, but they were so fucked up with, acid that they couldn't think straight. I'm just being very blunt about what I've noticed. And these kids are coming out going, oh yeah, F you, Matrix. I've got to figure my shit. I want to live my life. I don't want to pay to play. It's a very Gen X term, pay to play. Yeah, they don't want to do that. And yet we did it because there was no other collective reasoning that said we should not. And for those of us who were already unplugging or trying to figure out, how do I fucking unplug from this shit? We were lone wolves in that game, in the very beginnings of really, truly trying to figure out, And so for many of us, we got trapped in the concept of, let me be a fucking multimillionaire. Made sense. More money gives you freedom, gives you choices. People, money doesn't make you happy. No, but I'll cry on my fucking private jet to the Bahamas, right? That was the mentality in the 80s, right? And so what's happening with these kids is that they are the wave. We keep talking about twin flames, waves. No, fuck those waves. Let's talk about the wave of unplugging out of the matrix. And these are the kids that are actually building the crystalline grid-like codes to the other side, away from a system that's never been kind or generous or fair. It's created for you to lose. It's kind of like gambling in a casino. You're going to lose. You might win a hand or two, but at some point you're going to lose. And so it's on that level of fuckery. And these kids, a lot of them understand it. So we need to kind of, how sad a lot of companies were doing that in the 80s. I'm north of San Francisco. They were doing, honestly, I don't know why people have this idea that the 80s was so good. It was so much fun. It was fun to be a kid, I guess, in the 80s, because you could roam, but you still had to be street smart. I mean, when I was living in New York City proper, for example, because I lived in Pacific Palisades, we go to Malibu, this, that, and the other. And don't get me wrong, it was fun. I'll tell you why. Because in the 70s, when I was a kid, Malibu Beach was the real deal, meaning there were no gates. And I remember going horseback riding on the beach, and no one gave a fuck. No one gave a fuck. Dogs would be running because they were well trained. There was no fucking crazy shit happening. And you'd see famous stars like Steve McQueen and Faye Dunaway or whoever, or Natalie Wood or whatever. And no one gave a shit. No one gave a shit. It was just, no one was like exclusive. There was no Diddy parties. There was the Playboy Mansion, but only certain types of people went there. And, it was that kind of world. It was like, on the level of simplicity, it was simple, but don't get it wrong. There were still some hack jobs that were going through that timeline. And there were some really fucked up things, but it was undercover. I could tell you stories that would actually make you turn. I mean, you the color in your face would drop. I could tell you things that were happening simultaneously to all this idea of the golden age, but there was some really dark shit even then going on. And I was highly aware of it because I I was raised by parents that were making sure that I was street smart. Not to mention they were telling me the 411 on shit that they were finding out so they could warn me so that I wasn't going to be a 14-year-old kid or, and become a victim of shit. So they were very upfront so that I didn't put myself in weird situations thinking, oh, la la, it's all good. No, it's not all good. Here, pay attention, kid. And they would tell me what was up, okay? So that's the problem with glorifying the 80s, and that there was certain things that were good, absolutely. For one thing, at least you knew your tomato didn't have GMO. I'll give you that. But I feel as if most of my friends, they had, they were, all the women were housewives, all of them, all of that. There was not one woman I knew that was actually working. In the early 80s, mid 70s, early 80s, all the women were at home. They were all homemakers. That was normal. My dad did other things. He never worked for anyone. He was doing his own thing. And my mom was a homemaker. And so all my friends, all of our mothers were home. And I think that we started normalizing women being out of the home in the late 80s. And I know that there are young women that are Gen Xers crying and going, what the fuck? I don't want to work. I don't want to do this. I don't want this life. And so why are we surprised? A lot of them are turning the OF shit. They don't want to work 9 to 5 and make $15 an hour and see the taxes take so much shit out that it comes out to like what, $11.50 an hour? And I'm supposed to pay my rent of like $2,000 or a room for $1,200. What the fuck is going on? I mean, these kids aren't stupid. So some of them are doing OF, and they're hearing these girls saying, I make $300,000 a month, and these girls are throwing their hat in the ring going, fuck it. If I don't give a shit if all I make is $100,000 for the whole fucking year. We've created a system that's so corrupt that it's turning our brightest and best into they're being pushed into situations that devours their ability to have real intimacy with real people. And it's destroying our, I'm not going to say society because it was never good. It's destroying the yin and yang, the balance of the feminine and the masculine. That's how I'll put it. It's the final sledgehammer to eradicating any trust between the genders, any honoring between the genders. That's the problem with OF. I was watching Bonnie Blue. They were with another girl that's also an OF, and they were kind of talking shit about each other in each other's face. And one of the chicks said, dark-haired girl was saying to Bonnie Blue, well, I make $2.1 million per month, just like you, and I don't have to have 1,000 men. I mean, it was like the conversation was fucking insane. And so you're going to have a 15-year-old girl, 16-year-old girl listen to that. You're going to have that girl get a job at McDonald's or a restaurant as a waitress or a retail store. You're going to see that girl have a couple paychecks. After 6 months, she's going to fucking say, fuck this. I mean, can you blame him? Seriously, can you blame him? And I'm not saying marriage is it. That's for sure. But we need to have a balanced community where this type of system no longer exists so that people can thrive, feel safe, feel supported. An Ubuntu society that actually respects every citizen. It's not like the Native Americans didn't fucking know how to do it. It's not like we don't see other Western European nations that had the shamans and druids and druidesses working and living in communities and being okay with each other. And, you know, It Takes a Village is a great book that Hillary Clinton stole from an African saying, it takes a village, but no one fucking does it. Because people are paranoid as to who they're leaving their kids with. Well, if you have a community, guess what? Any pedo is going to be found out pretty quickly, and they're going to be thrown out of the village. So there was protection. And we've lost our way. And we miss our communities. We miss being able to share duties. When you go to the old Italian villages, they had one common, oven, stone oven. And people would prepare their breads, right? And take it down to the local baker, who would throw everyone's loaf of bread in the oven. This was a daily practice. There would be a well that was the common well that everyone went to get their water for the day. We don't have to live to that level of primal, we don't have to be that primitive anymore, and we won't. We won't. But we'll be able to capture, solar energy, wind energy, perhaps even water energy, and take the best practices and create communities. But, the book, The Celestine Prophecy, for that many people to read that book, it's almost like everyone wants to get the fuck off the planet. Because that's exactly what happens at the end of the book, you'll read it. That's exactly what happens. They're gone. And the whole journey is how do we get to that place consciously, vibrationally, so we also can get off the fucking planet. But we don't have to get off this planet. The planet's not the problem. You know what I mean? It's the infrastructure. It's the leaders. And I use the word loosely. So that's what we need to kind of look at. We have to believe in ourselves and believe that what we remember, even if you can't even articulate what you remember, there's an energy that you remember of your past lives in other realms where things were balanced. Even if you can't see it in your mind's eye, there's something that reminds you and tugs at you that says that there were times when you had great lives, where things were taken care of, where you could actually, everything you needed, all resources, any need was taken care of. And it was taken care of by your mind, your thoughts, your desires. No one was controlling you. No one was oppressing you. This is why I'm so glad I was able to somewhat share a little bit about the Andromeda and talking to the Galactic Council and saying, we have to honor their free will. They have to. Yes, it's very difficult for them to have a free will because some of them wage wars. Some of them do all kinds of, but they need to be protected. Some of them who have free will, who are from the light, who want the best for the collective, we need to allow them to express that power so that many more will be catapulted to the other side of a higher consciousness of understanding. One of the belief system is that the draconians, the reptilians, can't ascend, and they can. I've seen it. They can go from brutal barbarism to having their heart chakra explode open. They're ascending. And to ascend, right, some of them descended into 3D. To then ascend into a transformed self. God knows how we were made in the very beginning and how some of them turned into the monsters they became. These battle-weary, ugly, looking to just conquer and destroy beautiful, sweet, loving, sentient beings on planets that just wanted peace. Again, I was watching the movie Valerian and the Thousand Planets by Luc Besson. Luc Besson is a starseed like you wouldn't believe. By the way, he's big in numerology. He was born March 18th, 1959. All nines. His life path is 9. And the 18 is 9. He's a double 9. And if every movie he's ever made is fucking brilliant. He's never made a fucked up movie ever. Most of the movies he writes them. He's very much involved. And he was raised by his parents who travel all over the world. I'm going to say that they probably knew the Cousteaus. You know, I don't know if you know who I'm talking about. Jacques Cousteau, who was an underwater oceanographer who would create incredible documentaries about the depth of the ocean. He had like little mini submarines, and he was amazing. He had a whole team of, they were all French. And in the 70s, everyone was watching a Jacques Cousteau documentary with fucking subtitles in English. I kid you not. Or he started learning English, and he would speak in a broken English, and I think they still had subtitles. But anyway, the point is, Luc Besson was raised by his parents who were scuba divers. And he grew up scuba diving. So he grew up seeing the world through the depth and bottom of the ocean, looking up at the warped sky. So he started seeing things from a different point of view. Does that make sense? From the giddy up. I bet you he was swimming before he could walk, right? One of those kids. And this is in the days before they were outlawing talking and hanging out with dolphins. So this kid would have been hanging out with dolphins, orcas, sharks, whales. You got, you get the picture, right? So he was being activated, massive, right? And The Fifth Element was a cartoon that he was writing in his notebook when he was like 15, 16 years old, as a cartoon that he had created. And he got to make the movie, which is amazing. It's one of the great movies, The Fifth Element. So we were watching, my son and I, we have movie night once a week, and we were watching Valerian and the Thousand Planets. Benign people. Benign sentient beings. Watch the movie. It's incredible. And it's campy. It's totally unhinged, campy. It doesn't give a fuck. But the message is clear. And we can't create what we've destroyed. And there's a way out. And we don't have to rebel. We don't have to do anything like that, ever. What we need to do is change the frequency of our consciousness. We need to train our monkey mind not to tell us that nothing's possible. It reminds me, they're showing me again, Indiana Jones in the last movie where he and Sean Connery have found the Grail, right? He has to cross this ravine, right? And the ravine, there's no plywood or anything. So somehow his father, I think, or somebody tells him, you can cross, but you have to have faith. And the old knight, the Grail knight, is holding on to all of these various cups, right? But you see him like almost closing his eyes to put his foot down into what looks like fucking he's going to fall. And he's in shock because as he puts his foot down, there's a solid matter, though it's see-through. You can't see it. And he crosses over to be with the knight. And there's different types of grails. There's like these jeweled ones made out of gold. And of course, it's the plain cup, right? And so we have to get to this understanding that we have been coded. And by the way, the universal law is if you're going to fuck people over, you got to give them like an advance notice. And you've got to also show them ways out. So it's almost like some of these screenplays are written. Watch the show Hollywood Decoded on Gaia.com. You'll be blown away. And so it's a law. It's a universal law that if you're going to do this, you better give them a way out. And they've been giving us ways out. They've been showing us again and again. And we're only seeing it as entertainment instead of. That's why we got to a place where people were actually saying The Matrix is a documentary. It's not a fucking movie. It's a documentary. And what does that mean? It means that there is no spoon. What does that mean? It means that whatever your mind decides is what is going to be. And so that would then support the Harapan Valley, and those people, poof, gone. Where? Pfft. They're probably still there, but we can't see them. You see what I'm saying? And that kind of courage to become the maverick, it's no different than going out in the Old West. Going out in covered wagons and being attacked by, various different points of views, right? Being attacked, where, people don't make it. Watch 1883, it's a good example of that. And suddenly you're on the other side and you've made it. You've made it to a place where no one can fuck with you. No one. Because they're not a frequency match, meaning they didn't cross that area yet. There's no railroad tracks. In other words, if you want to get to Oregon in 1883, for example, or 1870, you've got to cross on a covered wagon. There's no airplanes, there's no trains. You either do it this way or you're not getting there. You're not going to be there. And it's very similar to us. Raising our frequencies to be a match to another reality that sits tandem to this one, but we don't get to smell this anymore or taste it or hear it or be a part of it. And they have no way to see us or touch us or bother us. Clearly, the way for us to grow and for us to create a community is to raise our frequency to that. Didn't I say that many of the monks and nuns had to literally carve holes, rooms, whole entire apartments into the side of mountains, way up in the mountains of, I don't know, the Andes or the Himalayas or whatever, to stay the fuck away from people so they could be left the fuck alone? Like, dude, if you're that hot to get us, you're going to have to climb some mountains. And at that point, maybe you're one of us anyway. You know what I mean? So we have a lot to consider, and we have a lot of choices. We're not stuck here. I remember. That's beautiful. So thank you all for being here, and thank you for your patience, and just do your work. You have to really do your work. And your work is training your monkey mind. The work is for you to master yourself. Master yourself. I was talking to a friend of mine, about Bobby Sands. He's the Irish rebel who languished in jail in Ireland because he wanted to be treated, imagine that, treated with some dignity. Can you imagine? So he actually fasted for 66 days until his body collapsed and he transcended. In the Vedas, by the way, and I'm not going to say that because I don't want people to misuse that knowledge. But so he transcended and mastered himself. And he was not afraid of the other side of the veils. He was not afraid of death. Death walked beside him and he smiled. And this is not a man who would probably come back to 3D. Because that kind of mastery would never be a match for 3D. 66 days. So mastering your monkey mind is, I'm not asking you to fast, don't get me wrong. But if a man can do that, a young man no less, who could have wanted all the nectars of life, the food, the beer, the wine, the women, he would have been celebrated. He would have been a hero. Even if he broke his fast, he would have been a hero. He's a hero now. But he chose to stay the course. Similarly, you have to master, and I have to master my monkey mind until this reality, this matrix, is no longer part of my life. And many of you will be alive to see the shift. And how will you know? You'll be still fully aware, and you'll realize that the leaders that were once considered, normal, like, in other words, part of your daily fucking reality, will no longer be there. It'll be as if the veils shut down and a new reality has come through. It's funny how the movie Inception is an incredible movie, right? But you don't have to worry. It's not like Inception. It's interesting how they give you movies to scare the fuck out of you about alternative ways of consciously being aware of their self. Do you remember the movie? He has this little top that he uses. And if it doesn't fall over, he knows he's still in a dream state. Remember? He keeps it to make sure, and he twirls it on the table, and if it falls over, he's good. If it doesn't, he realizes he's in the wrong, in other words, he's still asleep. And in the end of the movie, what do they show us? He goes to see his kids and his wife, and the top is still spinning. The subtlety and the fuckery of Hollywood, this is why, in a way, it needs to collapse. This is why guys like Mel Gibson walked out and went, yeah, fuck off. I'll do the Passion of the Christ in Aramaic and Latin. I'm going to do shit, and I'm going to show you that what you're saying is not a fit for the palate of Americans and the world is. So he rebelled his ass out of there. And he was the first one to talk about demonic shit, but then they set him up with some, men in their root chakra, I'll just say that. But anyway, so he, Hollywood can't continue. To be honest, it's something I said about 2 years ago. I said, I'm more interested in people like you. In fact, if you look at how many people I follow, it's damn near 10,000 people I follow. Why? Well, because I'm interested in you guys. I'm actually interested. I think you're interesting to me. You're more like, I don't give a fuck about Brooke Shields telling me X, Y, and Z. If I mention Brooke Shields, it's to show you what was going on with the consciousness of the pedo Hollywood and how they saw that and normalize, a 10 or 12-year-old. I forgot how old she was, but she was no older than 12, being on the cover of Playboy and within the centerfold. Okay, hello. Okay, hello. That's the only time, but I don't give a fuck about her opinion. I don't care about her. I don't care about anybody. I don't care about Gerard Butler's opinion. I don't want to hear anybody that hasn't fucking worked a 9-to-5 job and had their electricity cut off because they hadn't eaten for 3 days and then the boss fucked up with the paycheck. I want to talk to someone like that. I don't give a fuck about these other people. I care more about you. And I care about you because, for example, what's happening right now by people like you is this whole ginger are black and gingers, redheads. And it's funny too, if you look at my videos, you'll see there's tons of redheads. Redheaded people have been in my life since I was 2 years old. And one of my imaginary friends, it was actually a guide, they would come and visit me when I lived in Paris, had red hair. Swear to God. Red hair, red lipstick, and a boucle Chanel green suit. Swear to God. I'll never forget. My family couldn't figure out who the fuck I was talking about. My first great love, Olivier, had red hair. So, and it turns out that one of my original incarnations, I had red hair. So I'm watching black people embrace people who have ginger, I think called ginger hair or red velvet. And there's all this love that's being pulsing towards these two people who have suffered in their own way, right? And of course, we're not comparing who suffered more, okay? We're talking about they have come to a middle road and are linking hands in incredible love. And I'm watching grown men and women sobbing and thinking. And then, of course, there's always one asshole who wants to kick the can because they're fucking miserable as hell on either side of the fence, black and white, to say, well, I don't understand. It's not really... There's always going to be assholes who want you to be as miserable as they are. What's beautiful and why I follow people like you, not famous people, people like you, salt of the earth people who have amazing stories about living in cars and getting out of the car and buying land, stories about building your own wood, like a bread oven in the middle of Alabama, and weaving your own fucking cloth from the wool that you're fucking spinning from your actual sheep. I like stories like that. And there's wisdom there. And this incredible level of love that we're seeing as a contrast to what's going on in the Middle East, for example, is magnificent. It's very healing. It's very important. It's something that we need to promote. We need to reshare and keep that story going because that's the story we need to keep showing about love. Brotherly and sisterly love. Acceptance, non-judgment. Those are the things that I want to hear about. I'm not here to look at how evil people are. We already know. We already know. Like, you don't have to... We know what's going on. And we know that there are people that are so fear-filled from their past lives as ancient priests and priestesses who were hunted down like dogs, and many of them in the spiritual community are still not speaking out about the injustices. They're not. They're afraid. They're afraid of losing their followers. They're afraid of fucking pissing people off. They're afraid. And I follow people that have passion, creativity, who tell stories of people long lost who have been dead 200-300 years, and it's either their own ancestor or it's somebody else that they never met, that for some reason they connected to, and they want to speak of their story. The generosity of some of these people on this particular platform is I don't know, it's a community that you can still bank on. Yeah, there's a lot of fuckery with TikTok. TikTok's constantly fucking with me. Trust me. Constantly. You'd be shocked. That's why I'm forming my community. You know, this is why I'm calling you out. This is why I'm saying, listen, if you want to join my community, it's tiny. We have 54 people, but it's on my link tree, and you're welcome to join. Just introduce yourself. You know, you just don't walk into someone's house and not say anything and start opening the refrigerator. Just fucking say, hey, my name's Bob, or Jill, and I'm into this, that, and the other. But we need to start getting serious about building community, because this app has been threatened again and again and again, and there are content creators who no longer have a platform because of, you know, the 12-hour shutdown and all kinds of, it's constantly being threatened. So I would urge you to start your own communities. I would urge you to join other communities. I would urge you to keep in touch with like-minded. And yeah, the number 144,000 is not a joke. I mentioned today when I did a live with my son about the medical system, about the Ringing Cedars. So I'm going to bring it up again. It's called the Ringing Cedars. It's a series of books, just like ringing the bell, the Ringing Cedars, just like cedar trees, right? Look it up. And there are people that have been reading these books. It's written by a Russian gentleman for the last, I'd say, I think 25, 30 years. And it's about building community. I have the entire collection. I have not had time to read it, but I'm going to start cracking open volume 1. I think it's called Anastasia. And the reason why I'm sharing that with you is because maybe we need a blueprint on how to start these communities, and then also how to start to master our monkey mind so that we can create 5D on this planet. It was there before, so there's no reason why we can't do it again. We've done it many times. Let me see what you're saying. Hey, I'm Misty, and 144,000 on the other backup account. Oh, very cool. I worked through some 5D healing last night, then woke this morning feeling the weight of 3D. Well, the weight, why would you feel the weight of 3D? Can you explain that to me? Explain that to me, Balloon. Explain that to me, because I want to understand why that would happen to you. Thank you for so much incredible detail. Oh, you're welcome. Let me see here. Yeah, so I want to know why you would get up and have all this 5D and then crash like that. Do you not have friends you can talk to? Do you not have at least one friend that understands and walks beside you in the same consciousness and understanding with ease? If you don't, find one. Because you should not do all this 5D work and then suddenly open your eyes to 3D. Let me ask you this. Is it your job? Is it the fact that you had to wake up, get ready, and go to a job that in your mind is dead end? Is that it? Because it wouldn't be that you crashed into 3D. More specifically, I'm assuming, correct me if I'm wrong, that what fucking hit you was you had to go to work and deal with bullshit and bullshit meetings. You know, what I used to call beatings. I used to call them beatings because that's what they did. There was never anything, nothing was really, it was a complete fucking waste of time. So, just like, leave us the fuck alone and we'll make you rich. But anyway, yeah, think about what it was. Because if you're doing 5D work, okay, I'm not judging you because I'm thinking it's work. I'm thinking it's work, and I'm thinking you don't have a friend that is on your level of consciousness. And those two things are going to make you crash. So I get it. But if you're doing 5D work, then you should be able to, yeah, you're going to have moments where, it's not easy, but you should be able to come into a rhythm of collapsing timelines to create the kind of life you want to live in 3D while you are co-creating with many of us to create 5D. If that makes sense. Thank you for the likes. Does that make sense? So that's my concern, is what is it? Okay? And if you're going to work that hard, right, and you don't have a support system of spiritualists like you, right, that think like you, then you need to create one in some capacity. And this is where you have to trust your instincts, because it could be smart to buy 5 acres of land. Right now, I'm talking to people about my land, right, the land that I have, and either buying it all, or us creating a community together, or them creating a community, okay? And that's something that little by little we're going to see if that's a match. I'm waiting. Sometimes you have to wait for the universe to tell you what direction you're going. Sometimes you have to sit back and look at your coworkers, people who you probably would never fucking hang out with unless they were paying you to do it. Meaning, you outside of work, you'd never hang out with these people, right? So that's hard already. And 8 hours with these people, I've been there, done that, so I get it. But what I will say is that there are soul contracts with these people as well at work. And there are lessons there. I remember this woman, this is when I worked for Psychic Source, and this woman called me and said, I just keep having these jobs. They're just, they treat me like shit. And so I keep leaving. And then I get a narcissistic boss again. So I said to her, it's because you're not learning the lesson. It's not your fault. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to beat up the victim here, but you're not learning the lesson. So I had her, and I just did it today, by the way, with someone else, but I had her look up The Secret by Rhonda Burns, the documentary. And I said, in The Secret, in the documentary, you'll see a gay guy who is constantly being harassed and bullied at workplaces. He quits, finds another place, and he's constantly being harassed and bullied by people, constantly. And when he changes his frequency, when he changes his thought patterns, suddenly that shit ends. So I had said to that client 5 years ago who was, dealing with narcissistic bosses, I said, instead of being afraid of speaking, speak. Well, what should I say? Say this. I have never let anyone speak to me like that. I wouldn't even let my parents speak to me like that. And I love my parents, so I'm definitely not going to take that from you. That's not a bad thing to do. Now, could the HR call you in and go, you're being insubordinate? No. I'm not going to be spoken to disrespectfully or treated like I'm 12 or put down or humiliated in front of clients or colleagues. It's a no. And this is where you got to have the ability to protect your inner child. Because your inner child is looking up at you with expectant eyes going, what are they going to do? Are they going to just eat shit? Or are we going to fucking get fired? Or what's going to happen? And if you're documenting abuses at a workplace, you can go to Fair Housing and Employment and literally file a complaint. And wrongful termination is still a law the last time I heard. So my point is, you can't be afraid of what could happen. You've got to trust the universe. So what happens? So you get fired. And guess what? If you're in a place of gratitude, another job will be, in fact, there'll be a job you applied for. It could even be the job you really wanted to, and the person they hired quit on them, and now you're the second on the fucking rung, and they want you. It turns out to be the perfect fit. You never know, but when you let go of fear, magic happens. You see what I'm saying? So, anyway, there's so much. Her lesson was to speak up and to not take shit from a fucking employer. You don't take shit from them. And that doesn't mean that you're going to be impolite about it. You don't have to be rude about it at all. Oh, fuck off. You don't, say that to in a professional environment. What you say is, I remember that happening to me actually when I was in my 20s. And I literally, and I told this was the advice I gave that person on Psychic Source. But I remember this. I forgot who it was, but it was somebody who was talking to me. I think it was some woman. And she was like in her 40s or 50s. And I was like 21 or 22. I said, and I looked at her and I go, I don't even let my dad talk to me like that. And I love my dad. And no, you don't talk to me like that. And did I get fired? Probably. I probably did get fired, to come to think of it. And then I ended up getting a way better job that paid a lot more money, where I was actually respected and loved. You know what I mean? And then, of course, it was time to go on after that. I've had a lot of different experiences. But my point is, you don't take shit from people. Because what it does is it destroys you. I remember my mom was a Pisces. And she was working for a woman that was an absolute fucking psychopath. I'm not joking. And she worked for her for 15 years. And it fucked up her nervous system so bad that she went into a massive depression, to the point where she was doing shots of whiskey, which, trust me, she was an alcoholic, but she was doing shit just so she could sleep because she was frazzled. And every once in a while she would fucking explode and tell her to fuck off, in more polite terms. But the point is, she stayed because she needed the money. Why? Because she was in her 70s still working. Why? Because the system's fucked up. Most elderly people can't live on Social Security. Let's be honest. They're all working. All of them are working. Okay? Our system is corrupt. So, my point is, I've seen people destroyed by taking too much shit for too long. Personally. And you do not want to do that. Eventually, they're going to fire you anyway. And you're going to feel stripped and dirty and violated and betrayed. So fear is really what's keeping you there. And you have to just choose abuse or your own self-respect. And if you have self-respect and you're fearless, the universe will provide. But you can't panic and bite your nails. If you can't master yourself on that level, then I'm sorry, eat crow then. But if you can learn while you're eating crow to master your mind until one day you've got the eye of the tiger and you're a badass and you can do it, at that point, yeah, get the fuck out of there. The universe will provide. Trust me. Okay? Trust yourself. What am I saying? Trust me. Trust yourself. But you can't, these jobs, yeah, you don't do that to people. You just don't. You absolutely don't. And what's interesting about the Gen Xers is they know that. They'll tell you to fuck off on a dime. and the boomers and some of the millennials are like in shock. These kids don't care. They have, some of you might say entitlement, okay. But aren't they entitled to being respected? Aren't they entitled to have a good job that pays their bills? And aren't they entitled to be spoken to with some level of civility? Yes, I'd say, yeah, they're entitled. And they're correct. And that's something that each of you has to decide how much shit you'll take. I mean, if I was going to take a lot of shit, they better be paying me like, I don't know, like $150,000 a year. Because at that point, you can eat crow for about a year, stash half the money, and then still tell them to fuck off in the middle of something. Misty fears meant to be put on my notes. Oops. What is her lesson? So hopefully that's the lesson you got. You understood the lesson. The lesson is to take care of yourself. and you manifest what you want. And if, like, for example, the book that I really love called The Project 369, it's that particular book, not any other book. It's Project 369. Trust me, I tried like 3 different versions, and the guy's good. He's really good at what he put together. But Project 369, and the concept of doing that, is very popular, because when you actually focus and you have the discipline to do it and show up for yourself, it works. None of us is stupid, trust me. We'd rather do all kinds of, we'd rather doom scroll than do half the shit I'm telling you. But we do it because it works. We meditate because it works. We do all the things that we do because it works. And so because it works, you would think that you say, well, best practice, what the fuck, let me do this, that, and the other. And I hate when people say, and I'll try it. No, you don't try it, you do it. Because when you do it, you'll get results, right? Oh, I'll try to go to the gym. No, you want to get in shape, you go to the gym 5 days a week. You don't try to go to the gym, you go to the gym. You don't try to fast, you fast. Or you don't. And you don't beat yourself up when you fail on either aspect of what I've just shared. But you don't just, this concept of I try. No, you don't try, you do. You do, and then you improve on what you're trying to do by doing it, failing, doing it again, failing, and then finally you've mastered yourself and you're winning. So you keep doing it until it's a win. Because trying already has the vibration of it's not going to probably work out, because I know me and I fucking never finish what I start. And right there, the sentence, I'll try, is very telltale that you're not going to finish. You see what I'm saying? So that's a problem. That is a problem. Any questions or comments that you want to share with me? Anything at all? Anything at all that you want to share? So, anything at all? Okay, so I'm going to see if I can do a little reading on the energy of the room, on this particular room, meaning you guys. And, follow a lot of people. Try to follow people. You'll learn a lot. Try to see what other people's lifestyle look like. Go for people who don't live in this country. Follow people who live in this country who are making it work. Like, try to see what turns you on and what emboldens you and inspires you. What do they need to understand? Five of Pentacles, feeling homeless. The Wheel of Fortune is on your side. 7 of Cups. It looks like you guys are confused. It's too emotional. The past was a failure. And because the past was your failure, there's an idea that failure follows you every step. And that's not true. For some of you, that's a true reading. That you think that because things didn't work out, that's just I just never win anything. I'm always having bad luck. It's like, no, that's a loop in your head. 7 of Cups is being overwhelmed by choices and not knowing what to do. Follow your heart. How do I know how to follow my heart? Start meditating. Tell me more about this reading. The Queen of Swords is somebody who is thinking, constantly thinking. It's an air sign. Into the Queen of Wands, which is passions, fertility. Into the 6 of Pentacles. They're saying to balance your mind and your passions. Honestly, if I were you, I'd go with everything that turns me on in my heart chakra. If my heart says yes, I'd run towards it. I would not even try to logically prove anything anymore. I would not do logical thinking on anything. I would be, impulsive. And sometimes, you're going to fuck up. Trust me, you're going to fuck up sometimes. Sometimes impulsivity is not a good idea, but sometimes, for the most part, you would have never known. Being afraid is your jailer. Fear is your jailer. Tell me more about them. What are they supposed to do? The Queen of Pentacles, you want money, stability, to the Queen of Cups. Isn't that interesting? In this reading, you've got all 4 queens. So we're literally seeing a progression of consciousness. The Queen of Swords is a mathematical energy. The Queen of Wands is passion. The 6 of Pentacles is saying, balance that shit out. The Queen of Pentacles is you'll be grounded if you listen to your heart chakra with the Ace of Cups. Into 3 of Wands. 3 of Wands is portals opening. Yeah, opportunities would open if you follow your heart. Tell me more about this reading, please, for them. The 5 of Wands, outside distractions. Chariot, fast-moving energy, travel. Ace of Wands, follow your passions. You can't make this shit up. I mean, it literally is saying that your past is what's haunting you. Your failures is what's haunting you. And I always use this analogy that's really simple. It's the concept of a little toddler learning how to walk, and the toddler after, like, I don't know, 5 or 6 falls going, fuck it, Mom, get me a wheelchair. I'm never going to learn how to walk. It's absurd. And your failures, or your supposed pre-concept, failures of maybe going to college and changing your major. And I used to talk shit to parents. I'm not joking. I used to work in a culinary school when I was young. And the parents would go, oh, my kid doesn't want to know anything. I mean, she doesn't stick to anything. And I'd say, why would a 18-year-old to a 25-year-old stick to anything? They're supposed to go to college, and they're supposed to try classes. They're supposed to go, I don't know if I'm into anthropology, medicine, psychology, or mathematics. I don't know. So I'm going to try and take classes, and I'm going to change my major 5 different times. To me, that showed intelligence. To me, that showed a lot of intelligence, because a brainwashed kid would just stay and just, okay, mom and dad want me to be an attorney, and it's not really what I want, but I don't know what else I want. Well, no kidding, because kid, you're not even trying anything. Nothing. You're just staying in your course curriculum. And guess what? Quite often, these kids wouldn't pass their exams, the bar or whatever, because it wasn't in their heart. And some of these kids wanted to be anthropologists. They wanted to be Egyptologists. With social media as we know it, they would have fucking gone viral. It was a different world, but they were playing mommy and daddy's game, which was based on an old, tired system. And social media has changed the name of the game. Guess what is happening now? My son did a ChatGPT, and a lot of kids are doing that, by the way. And they're all asking ChatGPT, should I go to college? And the answer is no. Why? Well, because it's not going to get you a job. Why? Well, we just saw 2 people coming out of Yale. I think it was Yale. 2 graduates, one a white kid and one a black kid. Why does it matter? Because it didn't matter. It didn't matter what race they were. Both of them can't find a job. Now, in the 70s and 80s, probably even in the 90s, if you came out of Yale, Princeton, of Harvard, you were guaranteed a job at $150,000 starting salary, straight out the gate. So something is shifting and changing. And it's getting very, very hard for people to take care of themselves in the financial structure that is currently, goose-stepping us into more misery than we've ever had before. So your past failures are not your story unless you agree to that story and you've allowed the tapes of your parents, your community, your spouse, whatever, however, and you feel like a failure. If you think you're a failure, then you will be. Grandma Moses started paying in, I think she was 90. I think Georgia O'Keeffe was in her 70s. Anais Nin was first published in her 70s. I could go on and on, but why? Why should I? Why don't you blow your own mind? You know what I mean? So what else what else should I tell them about their journey? The King of Cups to the Chariot, Cancer energy, to the Ten of Swords. Yeah, try to, when the King of Cups comes next to the impulsivity of Chariot, it's moving. But it's funny because even though the Chariot is upright, it feels like the 2 horses are going in opposite direction, which means it's not going anywhere. And the Ten of Swords is the betrayal. Tell me more about that. The Ten of Wands is burdens. The Five of Swords is fucking, all kinds of fighting. And the Queen of Pentacles is here to offer grounding for money, 10 of Pentacles. Okay, so I know what you're saying. So it's going to be emotional. You're going to have to make a choice. You're either going to have 10 of Swords betraying yourself, or you're going to take the 10 of Wands path, which means drop your burdens, drop your bullshit, drop everyone's idea of who you're supposed to be. 5 of Swords is going to be fighting, also internal combustions of yourself, because you're going to beat yourself up. You might actually emotionally, spiritually beat yourself up. Queen of Pentacles is ground yourself into Ten of Pentacles. Everything you want, including financial success, will come. Page of Pentacles is just messages into the Knight of Wands, yo-yo energy, into the Queen of Swords. Yeah, into the Four of Cups. You're going to fuck up. You're going to go back into your monkey mind. You're going to go back to what you know if you're not careful. And Four of Cups is you're going to have an offer that you refuse because you don't see it, or because you're so, your head's up your wazoo. You won't see the offer, or you'll refuse a very good offer because you'll be in your logical mind. So, good luck. You cannot do things from the monkey mind's perspective. Okay, tell me more. Anything else? Nine of Wands, exhaustion. Knight of Wands, wishy-washy energy, yo-yo energy. Tell me more. Into Temperance. Well, that's fucked. Temperance upside down, which is Angel Michael. Usually he's transforming a person, but he's not, because it's been neutralized. It's upside down. And Judgment is coming in. Something is going to fucking return. In other words, if you don't get your lessons, it's coming back. It's returning. Are the lessons there to punish them, or what is that? The Sun. No, you need to have clarity. The Five of Wands, that there's outside distraction, that the portal's open. Yeah, sometimes you have to rush through a crowd to get to your destination. You have to push through the crowd, like, get the fuck out of my way. If you're not with me, you're against me. Get out of my way. It's like parting the Red Sea. You know? Get out of my way. I now see what I want. And tell me more about this energy. The Lovers. You're going to have to make choices. Ace of Cups. Do things that you love. And here we go again with the Queen of Swords. And that's you. You can't make this shit up. The Queen of Swords come back where you're trying to dissect using calculus and mathematical equations instead of following your heart chakra, because it has more wisdom and more connection to God, the universe, than your little monkey mind does. And Three of Pentacles says, well, it has two messages. One, some of you will master yourself. Some of you will be triangulated by a third-party energy, which could be how will people see me? How will people accept me? Your fear is a third party. A job, distance is a third party. Yeah, or you can be a master of your own fate. Anything else that you want to tell them? The Ten of Cups is there if you want it. Ten of Cups is emotional fulfillment, success, abundance, everything you've ever wanted. And they get it from mastery. Three of Cups, celebration, reunion, doing things from the heart chakra and celebration, always knowing that everything is abundant. Tell me more. The Magician. You can't make this shit up. It's perfect. The Magician is saying you can have it all. The Magician is saying, what do you want? Do you want it all? Or are you going to play small? And the Magician said, if you want it, it will be yours. Claim it. And it's weird how people just don't want to believe that stuff. They just would rather, like, who do you think came up with you can't have it all? Who do you think coined that phrase? I'd love to know, actually. But somebody came out and said it. And was that worthy of attention? You can't have it all? Why was that a necessary quote to, you know, to launch it worldwide? Why was that important? Think about that. Seven of Cups, confusion, temperance, upside down again because I didn't, put it up. And the Sun. Tell me more about the Sun. Queen of Swords. Understand your limitations. Your monkey mind is not your ally. Your soul is. Your soul is the ally to your life, not the monkey mind. The monkey mind is actually corrupting your joy, your ability to have an amazing life. And as long as you allow your monkey mind to make decisions, you will not achieve, or you will not be satisfied by your life. It's that simple. So you have to be bold. And sometimes you've got to go for broke. You got to just go, let me do something wild. Let me figure what is it that I really want? Well, it's crazy. I don't want to talk about it because it won't happen. No, but what is it that you want? And you should be comfortable enough with at least writing it down, or at least, I'm not telling you to tell your spouse who may be against it, but at least tell yourself what you really want. I don't care how crazy it sounds. And make sure it's not an ego-driven desire. Why? Because if you want to say to me, I just want to be rich and famous, why? Why do you want to be rich and famous? Why? I don't know. I just want money and fame. I want people to respect me. But why? Why? And a smart person would say, well, because if I'm rich and famous, I can help people who don't have, and if I'm famous, I can influence things. I can influence policies. Maybe I can influence politicians to be more generous, less of the assholes they are. Ah, now you're talking. Is that why you want to be rich and famous? Yeah, I want to build communities for homeless people, homeless vets. Aha. Now you're talking. You see, fame just for your own ego isn't a proper desire. Money just for the fuck of it, so you can get 30,000 Birkin bags in your closet is not, or Rolex watches, like a couple hundred in your closet is not good enough. Not anymore. Actually, not ever. But if you want these things because the greater good is part of that journey, and it genuinely is why you want that, then you're more likely to have it. Some of us don't want a lot of things. And some of us want all of it. And that doesn't make you a better person to want less, nor worse if you want more. But make sure that in your true desires, you figure out how will that serve the collective. And if your mindset is not connecting to what I'm saying, then to be honest, you're not ready. You need to do a lot more fucking work to be humble, generous, and very concerned not just with your own pleasures, but with making sure that everyone is going to be safe, have the right to thrive, to see their kids grow up, to see their grandkids grow up, and not worry about limbs being blown off. What a concept, huh? And that should concern you. And that's what Ubuntu is all about. It's an old South African saying, if one person is not happy in a village, the villagers surround them to say, what can we do so that we can bring back the harmony to our community? Because if you're not happy, then none of us can be happy. That's some massive selfless shit, isn't it? So anyway, I will go. I want to thank you all for being here. I'll upload this on YouTube. Please, if you didn't get the beginning of this live, it's important that you go all the way back and see this live. It'll be on YouTube probably by tomorrow morning. And much love, okay? Sending you so much love, and thank you for being here, and thank you for being you. All right, namaste, be well.